Watching TV has changed over time. Streaming has become the new norm. That's why Golden State Media Concepts television podcast dives headfirst to the world of cord cutting. Want to be on the loop of what's hot in Netflix? Or if it's not a preference, what about original shows in Hulu? We've got you covered. Join us as we fill in the blank and talk about movies to stream and what show you should be binging. This is the Golden State Media Concepts television podcast.
Yeah, it's sticky, isn't it? Sticky. That's right. Hello and welcome to the GSMC television podcast. We're part of the mighty GSMC podcast network, and I'm your up all night avoiding the curfew catchers host, Howard Fletcher. I'm joined as always by my trusted engineer, Jack the Black Pug, and we are positively honored and thrilled to be here with you once again. Remember when I said it was hot last week in the DMV? Well, it's even more hot and humid this week. It's ridiculous for this time of year here. I'm sweating like brick after a fifth of bourbon. You know what I mean? About to rant about mendacity or something. If you're new to the show, I'd like to give you a very warm welcome and thank you for giving us a try. We appreciate you choosing to spend some time with us. We know you have a lot of choices out there. Very honored that you chose us. We aim to please, so please stick around. I'm sure you're going to hear something you like. I'm confident that you'll hear something you like. That's the purpose. We want you to keep coming back. And if you're one of our loyal return listeners, you know the drill and you know how I feel about you. You are truly the reason that I'm here today. So let's have some fun. We have another jam-packed show for you today. I have another top 25 list to review. I know you're excited about that. Mrs. Dwayne Wade, well, she's not having it with Simon Cowell. She's not through with him. Live PD and Cops, those two shows, they're taking a break. The state of California starts to reopen, and I'll always bring you breaking news as it comes in. It's always coming in, as you know, and I'll be recapping Billions, Season 5, Episode 6. This episode's called The Nordic Model. So let's get started now with some breaking news. This one comes from Netflix. It's Next in Fashion. It's sewn its final thread at Netflix. Yeah, Netflix canceled the fashion competition series hosted by Tan France and Alexa Chung. I know neither of those folks. After only one season. Now, France, and that's one of the hosts, Tan France, she confirmed the news saying that we're not doing a second season, before hinting that perhaps the series could be revived elsewhere. This is a one-season show. We don't know what will happen in the future, France told Variety. This is who she gave this particular interview to. But it was honestly one of the proudest things I've ever worked on. I love the show and Alexa so much. My focus is definitely on Queer Eye and moving forward with that. Okay, so I just learned that Tan France works on Queer Eye. News of the cancellation comes just 2 days after Netflix jettisoned another show, The Astronomy Club. Did any of you guys watch Astronomy Club? I happened to miss it. I don't know why it got canceled after one season, but it's not a show that I would have chosen to watch anyway, so that might be one of the reasons. Netflix is developing a pattern of not only giving shows a single outing, such as Next in Fashion, the one they just cut, but it's joining a list of some series, and I'm going to read them out. One of them I watched. Messiah, that's the one I watched. Spinning Out, Soundtrack, and AJ and the Queen. Now, I reported on AJ and the Queen a few weeks back. That's the RuPaul show. And from the description of it, it didn't sound like anything great to me. I don't know if that's why it was, it's being cut. I saw Messiah, and I thought Messiah was interesting. And I thought it was very well made. But, if people don't watch these shows, there's one thing about Netflix. Nielsen, who usually does the TV ratings, they don't have access to what Netflix does. So they really can't tell you whether a show is being watched or not. Netflix has all that data. And I guess that if people aren't clicking on the show, Netflix is not going to invest in it, which makes sense. I just thought Messiah was something that was going to be watched. Next in Fashion featured some of the world's best, most innovative designers competing for a chance to become the next big name in fashion. The format began with 18 designers who faced challenges centering on a different trend or design style that was influenced the way the entire world dresses. All the contestants, most of whom had worked for major brands or addressed A-list celebrities, then competed head-to-head to see who had the skill, originality, and determination to win the grand prize of $250,000. That's pretty good. And an opportunity to debut their collection with luxury fashion retailer Net-a-Porter. South Korean designer Minju Kim emerged as the show's sole winner. The series, which debuted back in January, was created and produced by The Old School and was executive produced by Robin Ashbrook and Yasmin Shackleton, with co-producer Adam Cooper. I don't know who any of those people are, but they think that we should know, I guess. Elizabeth Stewart and Ava Chen acted as recurring guest judges on the series. Well, this sounds to me a lot like Project Runway, which was a show that my ex-wife used to watch, and therefore I watched it. And it was kind of interesting, Project Runway, at least for the one season I watched, and after that I didn't want to watch it anymore. It seemed to have a pretty good formula, and I guess there is a market for this type of show, or at least Netflix thought there was, because it chopped this show. It's not going to be on anymore. I would not be surprised, though, to see this show up like on Bravo or somewhere else. And even, I don't know where Project Runway is now. I'm going to guess it's on Bravo. If it could show, I wouldn't be surprised if they just ran these shows back to back. There's, people who like watching these shows. I mean, this is just some more programming time for them to fill. And especially, as I've mentioned on the show during this time, when new programming is at it's at a premium right now, because a lot of things were shut down because of COVID-19. And here is some late breaking news, not late meaning that it just came over the wire, late because it's a day late, but it's still relevant today when I'm recording it, which is Sunday. YouTube, as I reported on this show maybe 2 weeks ago, had a star-studded pomp and circumstance show that it was planning on streaming yesterday, which would have been Saturday the 6th, and now it's going to change. The Video Giants Dear Class of 2020, a 4+ hour commencement event, bringing together more than 70 celebrities, influencers, music artists, including, yes, BTS and Beyonce, and leaders including President Barack Obama and Michelle Obama, will now kick off when I'm recording this today, Sunday, June 7th at noon Pacific time, which means it's going to come on where I live on the East Coast at 3 p.m. YouTube rescheduled the event previously set for yesterday in observance of a memorial service celebrating the life of George Floyd being held in Rayford, North Carolina. They decided to pull the Dear Class of 2020 show in honor of that, or in deference of that, and they're going to show it today. Dear Class of 2020 will mark the first time that both President and Mrs. Obama will appear on the same virtual stage for commencement speeches. Michelle Obama's Reach Higher initiative will host the first hour of the YouTube special, and that's, again, 12 to 1 Pacific time, which includes a commencement address from Mrs. Obama and Beyonce Knowles Carter. President Obama's keynote address will be featured in the 4th hour of the special, and that would be 3 to 4 Pacific time, 6 to 7 Eastern time. That'll be followed by Katy Perry leading the graduates in a ceremonial tassel turn at the end of the commencement celebration. So that should be interesting. I'm going to try to catch some of it today. I certainly cannot sit down for 4 hours and watch all of it, but this is one of many big turns that YouTube is going to make within, I think, this next year. to become a source of their original programming. They're obviously the largest place to find creators all worldwide. You know, YouTube's biggest problem is having enough servers to keep these videos up and running. But now they're going to create their own original content more often. They're going to be covering the Olympics and doing other things. And, you know, I think YouTube's going to be a major streaming player for original commercial content, not just me and other people and you. So that's it for this segment. Next, I'm going to go over another top 25 list for 2019, 2020. It's a little different than last time. I think you'll find it interesting. Go get some refreshments. I'll be right back. Don't go away.
Want to know the latest and hottest music hitting the airwaves? Don't be left out. Listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Music Podcast. Keith keeps you on the loop with everything you need to know from pop, rock, hip-hop, and the top 40. And we'll throw in news of your favorite artists, concert and tour dates, and so much more. Listen no further, because this is the gold standard in music podcast.
All right, you ready for this, Jack? Here we go. We're back. A few weeks ago, now Variety ran a list of the top 100 television shows ordered by viewing audience for this past season, the 2019-2020 season. The Hollywood Reporter just ran a similar list. To them, it's the same list, but what they did is they used 7-day rankings as their measurement on how they're going to rank them. And I'm going to try to explain this. Each year, Nielsen processes approximately 2 million paper diaries from households across the country. For the months of November, February, May, and July, and that's also called the sweeps period if you've been around long enough to read about television or watch television, you've probably heard about sweeps or sweeps week. And that term sweeps dates from 1954, when Nielsen collected diaries, literal paper diaries, from households in the United States first. That's when they first started doing this, where they would sweep west. They would do this on the East Coast and move west. The 7-day diaries were mailed to homes, and people were supposed to keep a tally of what they watched on television and who was watching in their household by demographic, like all the women were watching this, or the, parents, 35 to 50 were watching this, or our kids were watching this, or we watched it as a family, all of that. At the end of the month, all the viewing data from the individual weeks was aggregated. 7-day ratings give a decent picture of where a show stands as far as how many people are watching it. At least, there's a lot of argument about the samples that they use. Personally, I know, now they do this electronically now, they have a box. I know of nobody, I'm in my mid-50s, okay? I've been doing this a long time, talked to a lot of people, been aware of Nielsen since I was in college, okay? Because we studied this in marketing. I know of nobody, to my knowledge. I'm sure, I guess, the law of averages would say that I must know of somebody, but no one has ever told me that they participated in a Nielsen ratings poll. So I question their sample. But nevertheless, this is how ratings are generated. This is how we find out what shows supposedly are watched a lot and what shows are not. Now, viewing on digital platforms, which Nielsen doesn't include in its delayed viewing numbers, meaning not, you didn't watch the show at the time it aired the first time, can account for half or more of a show's audience over the course of a season. Shows like Fox's animated comedies, Family Guy, Simpsons, etc., and NBC's Brooklyn Nine-Nine or Good Girls get huge chunks of their audiences from nonlinear viewers. In other words, DVRs or on-demand viewing. Most of the shows that I watch off of DVR, or I could get them on demand, but I still DVR them. And, so it's, if that was left out, then people would probably say Howard watches no TV. If I had to do it, the only thing I watch in real time are sports, really. And that's one of the reasons why probably football it always ends up on top, although a lot of people, I think they're pretty accurate. A lot of people watch football. Okay, this list that I'm going to go over is in some ways different than the one I shared that came from Variety. So I thought I would share this one with you too, to see if there's some shows that appear on it or some shows that you were looking for the first time and you didn't get to hear. So the telling part is at the top of the list is the same for both of them. So pretty much, the most popular shows it's pretty accurate. The top 10 is the top 10. That's pretty much it. But I'm only doing the top 25 like last time in the interest of time, and I'll do them from the bottom up. So we're going to start at number 23 because there's a 4-way tie for number 23. And that's American Idol Sunday, and that's on ABC. The Voice Tuesday, and that's on NBC. Station 19, and Manifest. Manifest did not appear on the first list. The list went over a couple weeks ago, so I thought that was kind of interesting. The next number is 20 because there is a 3-way tie for number 20. You got the Conners, which is on ABC, as you all know. That's how they salvaged the Roseanne show after she got booted off. Young Sheldon comes in at 20. Young Sheldon, if I'm not mistaken, and let me really scan this thing, I think, and if you want to include the Conners, I think those are the highest situation comedies on this list, which is telling about sitcoms. I don't watch many sitcoms, and I just think there may be a dying breed, or you better come with something good. But, there's sitcoms that I think come on that delayed viewing thing, like It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, which I know a lot of people that watch it, but they probably won't end up on anyone's quote-unquote diary if they watch it when it came on. The last one, tied for 20, is A Million Little Things, and that's on ABC. We jump up to number 15 next because there's 5-way tie for number 15. You have The Voice Monday, and let me just interject here. The last list we went over, the Variety list, it only had one day of The Voice, which I found kind of, surprising to me because I think The Voice, as far as I understand it, even though it's a show I don't watch, gets pretty good numbers. So this list reflects that. Anyway, number 15 starts with The Voice, and then you have American Idol Monday, Chicago Med, Big Dick Wolf guy, NCIS, and New Amsterdam. Now we jump up to number 13, and it's a 2-way tie for number 13. You have 911 Lone Star, that's a Fox show, and The Good Doctor on ABC that has my boy Freddie Highmore in it. I used to watch Bates Motel, and I don't know if any of you all did. I thought it was pretty good. That guy Freddie Highmore I thought was pretty good as Norman Bates, young Norman Bates, and apparently he's doing a good job on this show, The Good Doctor, because it always is on these top 20 lists for ratings, so they're doing okay. Number 11, you have a tie for 2-way tie for it. It's Lego Masters on Fox, which I said the last time we did this list. I didn't even know Lego Masters was a show, but it obviously does well. I think it was number 10 on the last list we looked at. And this is the same mistake I made last time. Modern Family, which is a comedy, comes in at number 11 here. But Modern Family just finished. So if you take Modern Family off of this list, the only current show or show that's going into the next season would be The Good Doctor and The Conners. They were all the way down at number 20. But anyway, Modern Family comes out with a good showing, number 11. Number 10, Dick Wolf Show, Chicago Fire on NBC. Number 9 is Survivor, another show that just will never go away, never die. People love Survivor, apparently. I stopped watching it a long time ago, but it just keeps going on and on, so good for them. Number 8, Chicago PD, another Dick Wolf entry. Dick comes in hard at the end. Number 6, 2-way tie. You have 911 and another show, which is an all-time long runner, Grey's Anatomy on ABC. And the top 5 are all single seeds. There are no ties up here. Number 5 is The Bachelor, which is another very popular show, obviously. Number 4 is This Is Us, which people love. As I've said on the show before, I've never watched the show, won't watch it because people who refer me who tell me that I should watch it, always talk about crying. I don't want to do that. Number 3 is The Masked Singer, a show that I grossly underestimated, disrespected, and The Masked Singer just, made me eat crow. It is number 3 on this list for last year. And the top 2 shows are football. And let me, adjust or correct what I said beforehand. On our list last time, the top 3 shows were Sunday Night Football, Thursday Night Football, and Monday Night Football. Well, on this list, on the 7-day average, Monday Night Football doesn't appear in the top 25, which is very interesting. But your top 2, number 2 is Thursday Night Football on Fox, and number 1, which was number 1 on the other list, Sunday Night Football on NBC, which pulls in about 6 million viewers on average every time it airs, which are really great numbers. So that's it. I hope you found it. I find this kind of stuff interesting. And it's always good to know what people are watching, even if you don't watch them. And there are quite a few on that list that I don't watch. So next, I'm going to talk about Gabrielle Union, Mrs. Dwayne Wade, and her complaint with America's Got Talent and Simon Cowell. I'll be right back. Don't go away. Thanks for listening.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
All right. I want pizza. Get out of here. All right. We'll talk about Gabrielle Union. Now, I heard about this a few months back, maybe as many as 6 months back, and I thought it was over, but apparently it is not. And we'll see what happens. Anyway, Gabrielle Union filed a harassment complaint Thursday in the state of California against the producers and network behind America's Got Talent. In addition to the complaint, she raised a new accusation that NBC Entertainment Chairman Paul Telegny threatened her over speaking out against racism on set. Union, through power attorney Brian Friedman, it always cracks me up when they put an adjective in front of an attorney's name. This guy's a power attorney. He filed the complaint with California's Department of Fair Employment and Housing, DFEH, naming producers Fremantle Media and Simon Cowell's Psycho, as well as NBC Universal. DFEA complaints are often precursors to lawsuits. The nature of Telegny's, and that's the NBC Entertainment Chairman's, accused threat was not immediately cleared. She didn't go into details about how he threatened her, just that he did threaten her. Now, there was a cover story last week it was the cover story on Variety. There was also a story in some other trades, including the Hollywood Reporter, where Union spoke out for the first time with accusations of on-set racism and a lack of accountability from all the production parties. In a statement, a spokesman for NBC Universal said, quote, "The allegation that anyone involved in this process threatened Ms. Union is categorically untrue. We took Ms. Union's concerns seriously, and engaged an outside investigator who found an overarching culture of diversity on the show. NBC Universal remains committed to creating an inclusive and supportive working environment where people of all backgrounds are treated with respect. In response to that statement, Friedman, on behalf of Gabrielle Union, provided the following statement, quote, "It is very telling that NBC fails to substantially address the DFEH complaint that Ms. Union filed based on racial discrimination. Instead, NBC wants to try and play word games by saying that their chairman, Paul Telegdy, Paul Telegdy, did not directly threaten Gabrielle Union." NBC, of course, ignored paragraph 5 of the DFEH complaint, which specifically states, on or about February 4th, 2020, Telegdy threatened Union through her agent and warned Union's agent that Union had better cease from pursuing her claims of racism while filming America's Got Talent. To hide behind the fact that Telegdy did not call her directly, but her agent instead does not absolve him from his wrongful conduct. Should Mr. Telegdy wish to see phone records or call sheets from the date of his threat, we can make those available for the world to see. It is frankly sad, but not surprising that, rather than addressing its own racial discrimination, NBC wants to try and avoid the systematic issues that permeate its company. End quote. Wow, that's pretty, it's a pretty serious indictment. Union, now she's a client of a talent agency, CAA, which is a big talent agency. And it wasn't immediately clear which agent at CAA that Telegdy might have spoken to, that he contacted with this threat. Fremantle and Cowell have no immediate comment for the matter. So they tried to connect with Simon Cowell. Simon Cowell said, "My lips are sealed." Quote, "When Gabrielle Union informed NBC of racially offensive conduct during the taping of America's Got Talent, NBC did not stand with her in outrage at acts of racism," Friedman said. That's Gabrielle Union's attorney, invoking the company's recent support of hashtag Black Lives Matter. Instead, NBC did not care enough to either promptly investigate Ms. Union's complaints or even ask HR to get involved. Rather, NBC stood against her and directed its outrage at Ms. Union for whistleblowing about the racially offensive conduct she experienced while working for NBC on America's Got Talent, end quote. Friedman continued that, quote, "In sharp contrast to NBC's recent statement on race, what was truly an outrage was the fact that Paul Telegdy, chairman of NBC Entertainment, actually threatened Ms. Union in an attempt to silence her from telling the truth about racist actions that took place on the show. There is no place for this type of racial bullying in the workplace, and it's going to take more than a tweet from NBC to demonstrate that NBC intends to create an environment free from racism." Now, Variety reported last year, as you can tell, I'm researching this thing. Variety reported last year that Union and her fellow America's Got Talent judge, Julianne Ho, were dismissed from the series despite both having contractual options to return. Explosive reports followed about a culture of toxicity, including racist incidents involving guest judge Jay Leno, representations of blackface from contestants that were approved by producers, and racially charged complaints about Union's rotating hairstyles. At the end of all this, my goal, this is a quote, "At the end of all this, my goal is real change, and not just on this show, but for the larger parent company. It starts from the top down," Union said last week. "My goal is to create the happiest, most high-functioning, inclusive, protected, and healthy example of a workplace," end quote. Fremantle, Psycho, and NBC issued a joint statement. Now, all of those companies, just to remind you guys, Fremantle and Psycho are production companies. NBC is the network, obviously, that broadcasts the show. They issued a joint statement in response to the cover story saying that, quote, they immediately engaged an outside investigator who conducted more than 30 interviews to review the issues raised by Ms. Union. While the investigation has demonstrated an overall culture of diversity, it has also highlighted some areas in which reporting processes could be improved. Details of these new processes were not immediately available. One insider close to the show says some changes have been implemented, including the installment of sensitivity training in outlets to help screen and elevate issues to human resources more efficiently. Those changes are already in place, and the new season of America's Got Talent premiered on May 26th. All right, well, I wanted to bring it up because I think we're going to be hearing about this lawsuit because, as they said, if somebody files a claim, they usually come with a civil suit right after that. And it'll be interesting to see how this comes out because the first time that when Julianne Hough and Gabrielle Union were let go the first time, and Gabrielle Union made some of these claims against America's Got Talent, Howard Stern, who used to be on the show, supported her, which I thought was very telling. He didn't have to say anything, or he could have said that's not what happened, but he supported her in saying that there were some things. There was a very misogynist atmosphere around there, if I remember what he had to say correctly. It's a paraphrase, but that a lot of what she had to say about just the toxic atmosphere for women, he agreed with, was around there. He didn't mention, I don't believe he mentioned any of the racist claims. I do remember Gabrielle Union being upset about comments that were made about her hair because she used to change it up a lot and wear it in a lot of natural looking hairstyles, which apparently the producers didn't like. Anyway, it will be very interesting to see how this comes out. NBC or parts of the NBC Corporation are very progressive. Obviously, MSNBC falls under that. And so it'll be interesting, to see if in fact her allegations stick, and if so, what their penalty is going to be. Next, I'm going to talk about Live PD and Cops, two shows that are taking a pause, and who knows, their days may be numbered. Don't go away. Be right back.
Want to find out what movies to go see? Then check out the GSMC Movie Podcast. It's your ticket to the latest movies, whether it's a new blockbuster event, romantic, comedy, or action flick. This show has got it all covered. They talk some what to go see now. Don't bother. What's hot on Netflix and everything in between. That's GSMCpodcast.com/movie-podcast. When it's all about the movies, it has to be this new show. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
What do you think's going to happen with that? She has a case? I don't know. We'll see. I saw some blackface on there, though. We are back, and A&E, the Arts and Entertainment Network, as it used to be called, well, as it is, but now it's just A&E because they don't not much art on there, has decided not to run new episodes of Live PD this weekend. Meanwhile, the Paramount Network has delayed season 33 launch of Cops, the longest running reality series that was scheduled to return this coming Monday, be the day after this podcast drops, or the day before this podcast drops. 33 seasons of Cops. Could there be? Unbelievable. How many chases through backyards and clotheslines can you have? Obviously, never enough. The decision to hold Live PD and Cops comes as protests over police brutality continue across the nation following the killing of George Floyd by Minnesota police officers, shining a spotlight on the widespread abuse by law enforcement against African Americans. This weekend, A&E will air episodes of Live Rescue in place of Live PD. Quote, out of respect for the families of George Floyd and others who have lost their lives, in consultation with the departments we follow, and in consideration for the safety of all involved, we have made the decision not to broadcast Live PD this weekend, A&E said in a statement. Now, the Paramount Network hasn't yet commented on the fate of Monday's episode of Cops, but the programming schedule no longer shows it airing as planned, which would have been 10 p.m. Eastern Time. Ghostbusters, that is, I guess, the old Ghostbusters movie, not the new Ghostbusters movie, which I understand was bad, though I didn't see it. So if you're a fan of the movie, please email me at podcasthoward@gmail.com and tell me why I should see the newer version of Ghostbusters. Anyway, Ghostbusters is now scheduled where Cops was going to be this Monday instead. It appears that Paramount made the shift over a week ago, as it also didn't air this past Monday. But Paramount appears to not have future plans for Cops on the network. Already the show is no longer mentioned anywhere on the channel's website, so they may be looking to scrap Cops or maybe sell it. Who knows? Paramount Network owner Viacom CBS made headlines earlier this week when on Monday the company's cable networks went dark for 8 minutes and 46 seconds, the amount of time that Minnesota police officer kept his knee on Floyd's neck, killing him in the process. Cops launched on Fox in 1989. Wow, I remember that. And is considered one of the originators of modern reality TV. That's very true. But in recent years, it has also come under fire for how it depicts law enforcement and for questionable behind-the-scenes practices. Cops was the subject of a recent podcast hosted by Dan Taberski called Running from Cops. And this podcast that Dan does, it chronicles hundreds of episodes of the show. God bless him. Could you watch hundreds of episodes of Cops? Well, I guess I could if you listened to my podcast. I would do that. Taberski and his team detailed instances when people were coerced into signing waivers and how production allows police to edit and remove anything that might paint them in a negative light. Cops aired for 25 seasons on Fox, which was still when Fox was just starting. It was in the network was in its infancy. The network aired Cops together with America's Most Wanted on Saturday nights for 14 years. Most Wanted moved to Lifetime in 2011, but it was eventually canceled. Cops, meanwhile, got a new lease on life in 2013 when Spike TV ordered new episodes and paired them with repeats. I remember that. For a while there on Cops or on Spike TV, there would be like 2 hours straight of Cops or 3 hours straight of Cops. There'd be one new one and the rest would be repeats. I didn't watch Cops too often, but I remember seeing them in the guide. So that's why I said it came to mind. I don't get real joy out of watching police chase guys and arrest them. I just don't. Meanwhile, Live PD has been a tremendous hit for A&E. Since its premiere in October of 2016, the show follows cops and sheriffs live and in real time as they patrol various cities and counties across the country. As it turned into a sensation, A&E kept expanding the show's footprint. It's now the #1 series on cable on Friday and Saturday nights. Damn. After taking a break in the early spring due to COVID-19, it returned in April, and I guess it is going strong. Again, do not watch it. I will probably give Live PD one look just because I do the show and it is the #1 series now on the weekends, but I'm not going to watch it regularly. I don't think. Here is some breaking news from the West Coast. state of California on Friday gave its blessing for film and TV production to resume on June 12th, subject to approval from county public health authorities. The State Department of Health also issued extensive guidelines for schools, daycare facilities, and casinos, but it put out just a single paragraph on music, film, and TV production, essentially punting detailed rules to local health officials and to labor management negotiations. Production has been completely halted since March. I was going to say March the 3rd, but it varies everywhere. In California, I think it was March 14th that things shut down. And it remains uncertain when it will actually restart. The Alliance of Motion Picture and Television Producers drafted a 22-page, what's called a white paper on the topic, and submitted it on Monday for approval to officials in New York, California, and Los Angeles County. But union officials have said that job-by-job protocols remain to be worked out. The industry report called for regular testing of crew members, 6-foot physical distancing, and widespread use of face coverings. Industry sources have projected that the new protocols will increase production by as much as 20%. That's a lot. Los Angeles County health authorities have been waiting for the state to authorize production before issuing their own guidelines. Universal Film Chief Donna Langley asked county officials on Tuesday to quickly review the white papers and lift restrictions in accordance to the industry plan, in hopes that resuming production as soon as possible would be the best thing. The state also gave its blessing on Friday for sporting events to be held without spectators. Also beginning on June 12th, is also subject to labor agreement and local approval. The department published detailed guidance for schools, day camps, and casinos on tribal land. The film and TV production guidelines have been delayed over the last couple of weeks, and an entertainment roundtable discussion that happened on May 20th, Gavin Newsom said he expected to issue the guidelines for the following Monday, meaning this coming week, Monday. The following week, however, he said that the guidance would be postponed by his office until the office worked with labor and industry stakeholders to refine the rules. So California is still very hesitant about opening because the numbers have been going up there, and I totally understand that. And if you can see both sides, I understand why these people at the studios want to go back to work. But they got to do it in a safe way. So this is positive. This isn't a, well, hurry up and wait situation. It's positive, but it's just going to be slow. This whole recovery thing is going to have to come in stages. And so I wanted to mention that because some of your shows that you might be a fan of, have vested interest in, aren't going to be showing up new in the fall. They'll probably come if they can reach an agreement, they will hopefully be here this spring. Let's just hope. Anyway, next I'm going to talk about some real breaking news that's coming in, and then I'll follow it up with a Billions recap. Thanks a lot for listening. Don't go away.
Golden State Media Concepts Sci-Fi Podcast. Together we dive into the world of sci-fi and science fiction. From episodes of Star Trek, Star Wars, to The Walking Dead, Resident Evil, all the hot new science fiction movies from the backdoors of Marvel or DC. The Golden State Media Concepts Sci-Fi Podcast. You'll never look at science fiction the same way again.
All right. What are people thinking, Jack? I don't know, man. All right, we're back. You know, it's strange times right now, and I don't know what people are thinking, but this came up on the old wire, and I'm going to go over it, even though it is, unfortunately, it's not tied into COVID, but it's tied into the civil unrest. It has to do with television. Fox News Channel on Saturday apologized after the display of an on-screen chart showing stock market gains in the wake of infamous killings of black men and generated sharp criticism, acknowledging that the graphic should not have aired without more context. Now, I don't know what more context you need, but anyway. The illustration was used Friday on a broadcast of Special Report with Bret Baier, the cable news outlet's regular 6 p.m. program. During a segment examining recent stock market performance, Fox News used a chart that showed how the S&P 500, a widely used barometer of financial health, had made gains after the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr. in 1968, after the police shooting of a teenager, Michael Brown, in Ferguson, Missouri in 2014, after the acquittal of police officers who beat Rodney King in Los Angeles in 1991, and after recent death in police custody of George Floyd in Minneapolis. Quote, the infographic used on Fox News Channel's Special Report to illustrate market reactions to historic periods in civil unrest should never have aired on television without full context. We apologize for the insensitivity of this image and take this issue seriously, end quote, the Fox News Corporation-owned outlet said in a statement. Use of the graphic drew condemnation from Bobby Rush, the Democratic representative from Illinois, also an ex-Black Panther. I'm just putting that in. They didn't have that in this article. Bobby Rush used to be a member of the Black Panther Party, who said via Twitter Friday that this graphic makes it clear that Fox News does not care about black lives. During the segment, viewers heard a reporter say, historically, there has been a disconnect between what investors focus on and what happens across the country. For instance, in 1968, the week after the tragedy of Martin Luther King, the S&P 500 rose over 2%. Also up the week after the Rodney King ruling. And it was up on Wall Street trading on the reopening in 2020 after the George Floyd killing. The program followed the report with an interview between Baier and Shelby Steele, a conservative author and fellow at Stanford University's Hoover Institution, who studies race relations. Baier, the Fox News anchor, tweeted the network statement on Saturday. Now, those of you who listen to the show, first thing you know, it's not a politics show. This is a television show. But, just full disclosure, I'm a journalist, though, with a master's in journalism. And I don't hold Fox News in tremendously high regard, at least across the board. There are some very fine journalists at Fox News, but I can count them on one hand. I can count them on two fingers. So I'm just going to say up front, I'm not going to, my point of view about how they handled this, among other things, is going to be very plain. And it's, I'm not going to be coming from a place of entertainment or just, this is just what happened. Because I think a lot of this stuff is, it's orchestrated. It's done for reasons. Shelby Steele, for those of you who aren't familiar with that gentleman, he is about as conservative of a black American as you're going to find, and somebody who doesn't really reflect the opinion of very many people in the black community. In fact, if you were to take a conservative Caucasian man and give him the physical features of somebody who identifies as a black person in this country, then you may have Shelby Steele. Anyway, I'm going to finish this article, this last paragraph, and then we'll talk about some more, because this is a ridiculous paragraph. The article ended with this: in a different era, it was an error. It wasn't an error, but now he's saying it's an error that they put this report on. But let me repeat and articulate better. In a different era, under the aegis of former top executive Roger Ailes, Fox News Channel rarely apologized for reports that generated offense or were deemed by critics to be inaccurate. The network has, in recent years, appeared more sensitive to matters of taste and propriety. Now, that paragraph it's accurate. That's absolutely right. That in a different era, they would not apologize for a single thing. However, as a journalist, I'll say that there's one thing to retract a statement that's inaccurate because you just got the story wrong or you didn't do enough research period. But when you go about printing something like this that took some creative thought, it's a different matter. Now, a media company, especially ones that call themselves journalists, if you apologize for collecting data, presenting it in a form that draws a heinous and irresponsible correlation, such as the oppression and subjugation of people having a positive influence on the stock market, it's like when a judge tells a jury to disregard prejudicial evidence that's already been completely and totally presented to the court and to the jury. They can't unsee that evidence. They can't unhear that testimony, but they're told to strike it. So for Fox News to come back and say, yeah, we assigned an investigative reporter or an investigative team or just some data analysts to make a correlation between these horrendous things that happen to Black Americans by either assassins or the police department and correlate them with rises in the S&P 500, and then to say, oops, we shouldn't have done that. Or the context, it was not taken out of context when to even draw that correlation is questionable. Why you would want to connect the two is just bogus. It's just either you want to connect bad things happening to Black people and a rise in the stock market, or you don't. You can't draw a correlation unless you look for it. So that's ridiculous. This is why we have editors and program managers and press rooms. Those who don't use them are no longer journalists. Journalists have a code of ethics. This was unethical. On the contrary, this is like propaganda. That's all I'm saying. And, on this show, I try to be fair. And like I say, when I don't watch something and it doesn't sound good to me, I will not tell you not to watch it. And I'm not telling you not to watch Fox News if you like Fox News, if that's your flavor of news. But what I am here to tell you is that this isn't journalism. That's not journalism. That's just, it's irresponsible as people, drawing a correlation, between, dogs that get euthanized and clean air. I mean, yeah, that might happen. You might have cleaner air in places where they kill more dogs, but that doesn't mean that, number one, it doesn't mean that killing the dogs made the air clean. And number two, why are you trying to find something positive out of killing dogs? Just like, why are you trying to find something positive about bad things happening to Black people? So I would suggest that those of you who consume news media, that when you're presented with data, sets, and correlations, when a media outlet starts to make a cause and effect argument, you might want to ask yourself, why is this important? Why did this outlet go to this much trouble? And they think it was so important that I should know this. Those are the things you need to ask yourself as a consumer of news. And I obviously take this to heart because, number one, I'm a journalist. Number two, I grew up in Washington, D.C., where we take our journalism seriously. Now, this isn't a hatchet job on Fox News. I did say some very uncomplimentary things about it. However, I'm quite dubious of a media outlet that would use resources to create a cause and effect correlation and then later apologize for doing so when they're called on it by the public. That's all. And that's the end of that rant for this segment. Next, I'm going to talk about Billions, Season 5, Episode 6. It's called The Nordic Model. It was a very enjoyable episode. I can't say a whole lot happened, but it was a really good episode. And we're going to talk about that when I get back. Don't go away. Next segment will be much happier. Be right back.
Are you tired of the same old news? Are you sick of the seemingly endless political spin and negativity? The GSMC America Still Beautiful podcast is a weekly news podcast covering all the top positive and uplifting news stories. We cover stories that will inspire, uplift, and remind you of the good in the world. Tune into the Golden State Media Concepts America Still Beautiful podcast to get all the great and positive news stories of today. Download the GSMC America Still Beautiful podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
All right. We are back. I'm happier, folks. You happy, Jack? Okay. Hope you guys are still with me. Billions. Season 5, episode 6. It was called The Nordic Model. Very good episode. This episode, The Nordic Model, is yet another somewhat uncomfortable reminder that Billions takes place in an alternate reality, New York. One where the Attorney General has time to pour his efforts into prosecuting a rogue billionaire and not investigate police violence toward peaceful protesters. Okay, I put a little bit more in there. The episode is about Chuck's latest attempt to nail Axe, this time for tax fraud, and how Axe ultimately unwitted the state AG by turning his apartment into a museum for his art collection. And that is the episode in a nutshell, but let's get into some details. After discovering that Wendy was the subject of a Nico Tanner charcoal original, that's the artist that Axe hired, Axe's possessive nature goes into overdrive. First, he makes an unwitting Nico, who hasn't delivered any art for Axe yet, paint a portrait of Todd Krakow, because Todd is the Treasury Secretary, and he's vain, and he agreed to help Axe get his bank charter, which is what Axe has been trying to do this season. That's his deal. He wants to get a bank. And he's going to base it, apparently, in Yonkers. Then Axe stays up all night, obsessively watching the security camera feed outside of Nico's building. In this building is Wendy and Todd Krakow, supposedly getting his portrait done by Nico. And in the morning, the second that Wendy emerges into the light of day, he calls her to invite her and Nico to dinner, claiming that he owes a lot to the art world. And because now the bank charter is within his grasp, he wanted to show his appreciation. But Wendy is startled by this call. She's unnerved by this call because she got it like right when she hit the street. And she felt like she was being watched, which she was by Axe. And she also knows, having been around Bobby Axelrod, I don't know how long her career has been, but for the lion's share of her career, she knows that if she's gotten on his bad side, then all hell is about to break loose. And so that can be rather unnerving with that guy. Okay, now let me get to Chuck. The specifics of Chuck's plan in this episode to go after Axe for tax fraud are rather moot at this point because it didn't work. And so I won't go into the details of it to waste time because I don't have a lot of time. But I will take this moment to admire a particular scene featuring Paul Giamatti, Damian Lewis, Vincent Van Gogh's work called Noon, Rest from Work, and a glass of 2010 Chateau Haut-Brion. Now, under the pretense of retrieving his son's video game, Chuck shows up at the apartment Axe lent to Wendy. Remember, we saw that, I think, in episode 1. And because he distinctly remembers seeing the paintings in question on the walls, and during the course of this episode, he questions whether these are actually reproductions, as Axe says they are, and he thinks they're the real thing. If they're the real thing, Axe needs to pay taxes on them, which he hasn't been doing. So Chuck shows up, and to prove that Axe hasn't actually been hanging replicas, Chuck goes full Miles Raymond, which was his character in Sideways, and he bums a big glass of not Merlot, but this Chateaubriand, which is a very expensive and fine wine. And he proceeds to reenact the version of the famous art blunder and sloshes wine all over the Van Gogh. Now, let's say that Axe's reaction to Chuck's clumsiness seems a little excessive for a painting that's only a replica. I mean, he almost dove in front of the wine to block it. Of course, since Giamatti's Sideways alter ego would never approve of wasting such good wine, Chuck makes sure to slurp the single drop left in the glass before making his exit. But it was a pretty funny scene where Chuck was trying to prove that this was, in his own way, that he knows that this is not a fake Van Gogh, that this is actually the real deal. Another facet of the tax fraud subplot worth examining is how Chuck used girlfriend Kat Brandt, that's Juliana Margolis, her feminist expertise to manipulate Manhattan District Attorney Marianne Gamm. And that's played by Roma Mafia, who had briefly seized authority over the case from Chuck, and he wants to get it back from her. So he has to figure out some way to try to manipulate that. And although it became irrelevant story-wise, like I said in the beginning of the segment, because the whole paintings and text things didn't work, I like seeing how Kat is becoming the person who can keep Chuck asks a very rightfully skeptical Kat for help in arguing against the decriminalization of sex work, one of the DA's key platforms. And his intention is to threaten Marianne, the other DA of Manhattan, just enough so that she'll relinquish the case that she just took from him. And it's kind of a dangerous ploy because due to his triggering history with sex work, Charles Sr., if you remember, hired a professional to deflower Chuck when he was only 14. I think Chuck does see sex workers as criminal, immoral, and deviant. He doesn't think very highly of prostitutes, even though he uses sex workers all the time. But Kat agrees to help, and she recommends that Chuck read her book, and she offers a very stern warning regarding the future of their relationship if he goes beyond his threats and actually goes after these sex workers. Fortunately, Chuck's threats don't come to pass, which allows Kat to continue her version of sex therapy, something that Chuck has needed ever since his 14th birthday. Joining them in the bedroom is a young, supple sex worker with nary a piece of bondage equipment in sight. So what's important here, as Kat assures Chuck, is we can do whatever we want to make of this. Whether it's reward or lesson or both or neither, there are no rules or requirements, and what she's trying to do is get Chuck to be a little less freaky, I believe. Of course, some people would think introducing a third person into the bed might still be kind of freaky. Charles Sr., despite being at death's door, still remains a real risk to Chuck making any substantial improvements in his life. The prognosis isn't good because Chuck and none of the bastard sons of his father are a kidney donor match. And so instead of trying to make the most of what time he has left, Senior remains as surly as ever, and he's still trying to stick around. He insults Chuck for not having the right blood type, and he rattles off a slew of horrendously inappropriate terms for the intellectually disabled. So he seems like he's going to be a pretty ornery cuss until he releases his mortal coil. Senior is determined to stay alive because he thinks that Chuck will turn into a massive failure if he's not around to push him towards some greatness. But Wendy, who also tried to be a match, has gotten him thinking about xenotransplantation, which is like using a pig kidney instead of getting a match because it's very hard to find a match. So it's kind of curious. I wonder if her motives are honest here, if she's trying to keep him alive to torture Chuck because she doesn't like Chuck too much anymore, or is she pushing Senior toward a slow and painful death? She would have reason to do both. It's hard to say at this point. As in most Billions episodes, there were other subplots, including comic relief from the Axe Cap offices, and Taylor Mason Carbon making some moves to nab a new client. But in the interest of time, I can't go into those specifics either. I'll just say that this episode of Billions was another good cat and mouse duel between Axe and Chuck, and in this round, Axe won on points. And so I'm looking forward to next week already. So that is it, folks, for this week's GSMC television podcast. We're part of the mighty GSMC podcast network. I'd like to thank you for listening. If you would, please follow us on Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook. Also, you can email me at podcasttower@gmail.com. I appreciate all of your suggestions, and I read all emails on air. Listen, as I've said, we're in very strange times. Some of the segments here, we reflected on some of the terrible things that are going on right now. Be kind to each other. Please, we're still in a pandemic situation, so be as careful as you can. Let's try to push forward and make this world what we want it to be. What do we want it to be? A place where we can watch TV, listen to my podcast, order pizza, and drink fine adult beverages. That sounds like a great world to me. Until next time, drive safely, don't take any wooden nickels, and I'll see you soon. Thanks for listening again. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Television Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.